Dimp Digital presents the DDT WrestleCast.
Hello, Apps here from Dimp Digital. Welcome to the DDT WrestleCast. This is the weekly pro wrestling podcast where we review wrestling shows from the present, the past, as well as reacting to the latest news from the wacky world of professional wrestling. We will be here every Friday on your favourite podcast app and YouTube, absolutely free. This week, I'm once again joined by the current FGL Fantasy Gaming League champion. It's Le Champion himself, Paper. How's it going?
Cool. Yeah, we're gonna get copyrighted one day for keep saying the champion, aren't we? You know, Jericho's gonna listen to this and go, right, that's it. Kick him off.
Jericho's more than welcome to come on and challenge that. So it's an open invite to Chris Jericho if he wants to come on and challenge for that title. But as far as I can see, you have one belt, he has 0 belts at present.
That is very, very true. So it looks like that one belt might be lost soon, which is getting worrying.
Yes,
itchy bum times.
The Fantasy Gaming League is getting very, very close, and we're getting up to halfway through the year. So if you want to keep an eye on that, head over to dimpdigital.com where you can see the gaming draft. And you might want to check out our gaming podcast, Idle Game Chat, which is what we do every Monday. Anyway, we've got a very special edition of the DDT WrestleCast. This was a request that was put in by a young gentleman called Nick Opalweski. He got in touch with us via Facebook on our Dimp Digital page, asked if we were taking requests, and yes, we were taking WWE requests, and he's put his request in to review Smack'em Whack'em, which is a home video classic, and you can find it under the originals on the network itself. We do have as I mentioned, we'll go into the Patreon side of things, but we do have a tier dedicated to being able to request shows for us to review in the future. So if you want to do that, then head over to patreon.com/DDT WrestleCast, and you can do a number of different perks and different levels there, but that's one of them that you can put requests in, and we will do them so long as we can watch the programming legitimately for free, either on the WWE Network or YouTube or whatever. But I'm not going to be going around the houses going on illegal streaming sites to find these particular events. But yeah, he put this request in before the tier was created, before we had a Patreon, so I said I'd honour that for him, and it'll give you guys a taste of what we can sit down and watch. Smack'em Whack'em. Did you have any idea what this was before going on it? The only thing I saw was the little thumbnail had what looked like Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart, and Bret Hart sort of doing an elbow drop on Shawn Michaels. But other than that, before I switched this particular stream on, I had no idea what Smack'em Whack'em was. It's such an odd name.
No, I think I was exactly in the same boat. I'd seen the thumbnail, and I sort of then purposely kept away from trying to because I didn't know anything about this home video or show before it. I wasn't sure whether it was going to be a whole house show, for example, or whether it's a compilation of greatest matches or matches on house shows that they never showed on TV, or what it was going to be. As you said, all I knew was the thumbnail on the video, but the thumbnail on the video gets your juices going a little bit, because there's two greats there. This is going to be something sort of special, you'd say. One of those ones that just gets forgotten about a little bit because it's that old now. It's coming up to nearly 30 years old. So it's just one of those ones that you think, well, we were so young when this all came out. It probably just sort of fell through the ropes. However, people that do have listened to this WrestleCast recently have realised that we've reviewed the Royal Rumble from '92 and SummerSlam from '92. Yep. So this is from the same era, and I was generally quite excited considering those two events have scored very well on our points of view. So I must say I was quite looking forward to this one. Having a couple of beers and sitting down to watch this one on the WWE Network.
Yeah, so the thumbnail itself says Smack 'em Whack 'em, slamming wrestling action, and it says at the bottom, exclusive footage not seen anywhere. So I was thinking, Christ, what are they doing here? And essentially, from what I can gather, doing a little bit of research and just listening to them, watching the event, these appear to be matches or house show matches that have not been broadcast on the telly or on a pay-per-view before. So we're treated to a number of matches, 3 of which involve Bret Hart. So it's not like you mentioned their paper. It's not a A to Z house show that's been done. They selected specific matches to go on this, and it runs for, what does it run for? About 2 hours in the end, was it?
2 hours.
Yeah, 2 hours for this. So it's not a difficult watch at all. But it was interesting sitting down to watch this because I had no idea what to expect, and immediately we're greeted by Lord Alfred Hayes, who I'm assuming you love now because you've realised he's British and he's sort of flying the flag there behind the scenes and whatnot. But the thing that surprises me, it doesn't really surprise me because it's common knowledge. By the time this video comes out, I think it was actually released in '93, and it looks like most of these matches took place in '92, if not all. But he spoils the main event, or what is going to be perceived as the main event. He says, this is the video where we're going to show you how Bret Hart beats Ric Flair for the WWF Championship. Is that the smart thing to be doing from Lord Alfred, getting people going? Or if you were going into this blind, would you not have preferred just to be like, oh, it's Ric Flair v Bret Hart. Oh, he's won it. If you wasn't familiar with the history, I guess.
Yeah, do you know what? It's funny you said it. I didn't pick up on that. I don't know why. Maybe because I knew Bret Hart had already previously won. But thinking back about it now, you would think, well, you would sort of keep it neutral so that, someone who might have just maybe picked up this VHS from Blockbuster or something like that and be like, oh, there's some matches here. I wonder what's happening in some good matches. You've already sort of given it away. And having spoken on previous podcasts, one of my annoyances is when little things in the matches show that a certain person's clearly going to win it, and it just sort of ruins the match for me. So yeah, I would definitely think that. But Lord Alfred Hayes is clearly he's on the verge of getting dementia probably at this point, and I'm not sure. I would love someone to give me a history of Lord Alfred Hayes because I have no idea how he came around, how he became a part of the WWE universe, how long he was around in the WWE universe, because he seemed to be there over a few year periods. And what is Coliseum Videos? I don't know. Is it just some sort of production company that brought a load of rights to? I think there's some British production company that brought a load of rights to the WWE to sell, videos in the UK and stuff like that. Because he does pop up because he pops up at SummerSlam as well, doesn't he? So which is.
Lord Alfred was on the American side of things as well. So he was actually So it wasn't just this Coliseum video was developed, I imagine, firstly for the American audience. He was just one of the backstage personalities at that time. So he wasn't helicoptered.
Personality is a strong word for Lord Alfred Hayes.
Poor old Alfred, he's getting slaughtered here. He's not done anything wrong. Well, he has done a few things wrong because he introduced his video and gives away the main event, which is not ideal, but. Yeah, he's an interesting character. From watching, bearing in mind I've watched the pay-per-views only from this period, he kind of has like a few years run and then sort of fizzles out. Don't know if he goes into more of a backstage, but if you know the answer to this, contact us on Twitter at DDT WrestleCast, and whilst you're there, give us a follow so you can see some bants on the old Twitter machine. But he introduces that we're going to be seeing a never-seen-before match. And we'll get to the specifics of the Bret Hart and Ric Flair match a bit later on. But the interesting thing to realise here is that this was a title change that did not take place on TV or a pay-per-view, and it's the WWF title. So it's not like it's the Intercontinental title, which still is a big change. This is the big championship, and I don't know if you're Bret Hart, maybe you wanted that to be on TV somewhere, but. He introduces that as the main event. He says there's going to be a Yokozuna cooking segment. Which,
we'll come on to that later.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure what that's doing on there. And then we've got Home Improvements with your favourite tag team, the ones that you always remember, the Bushwhackers. and they're going to be making a rent house apparently with Lord Alfred Hayes sort of in tow, helping them out, and they dress him up in some safety gear to get him started. But we move on to our first match, which is the Berserker versus Crush. So we saw Crush at SummerSlam 92, and we had a look at that. He sort of had a bit of a cup of coffee as this incarnation of him. But I was really surprised when Crush was, when he come out of his music, the reception he got. Like, he got a big pop, and I was like, cool, maybe he was over at one point. But what did you make of this first match? I mean, bearing in mind, it's a home video product. I'm assuming all these matches at some point were not broadcast, and that's why they're on this video, so they're showing stuff that people haven't seen. But Crush v the Berserker, what's going on?
You know what? I
wasn't offended by this.
I wasn't offended by it. I just didn't really like the match, if I'm being honest.
Yeah.
Like, I see what you mean. Crush came out and is over, and everyone in the crowd were doing, his skull crusher, the two hands, Jesus. And everyone was going with their hands, and I was thinking, everyone's over this, and but then the match sort of kicked off, and it was just a bit, dull, and like there was like Alfred was on commentary, which probably didn't help, but the Berserker just kept doing these. I was getting annoyed by the amount of hussies coming out of him, and I was thinking, right, that gimmick's a bit too much now. Every other second there was a huss, and there was one point as well when Berserker did a power driver on Crush's head, and it looked like it could have broken his neck.
I wrote down a specific note for that. I was like, dangerous looking power driver on Crush. I thought it killed him. God.
It was horrendous. I looked at it and thought, crikey, because his head was well below his body, and I was thinking,
big fucker as well.
That would have really hurt. But yeah, it just wasn't a very good match in just general. Like, things just didn't seem to just connect very well, and I don't know, there wasn't really much of a story there. It didn't feel like. No. I don't know. I scored it relatively low, not like crazy low, but just below average. It was just what for me. We always talk about start a show off with a good match, like a pay-per-view, and this to me just didn't was in terms of its first wrestling match, didn't give it that little bit of spark. You think, oh yeah, I want to keep watching this now. If I'm being honest, I'm not a big fan of the skull crusher. Just generally in when it was done then, or if it's done now by someone like, I don't know, Lance Archer in AEW. I just think
weak piece that does to me. It's like...
it does. That's just. It's very theatrical, and everyone looking at it thinks, no one's going to have their skull crushed like that. Like, if you're going to do it, go full on to maybe Game of Thronesy, when there was the mountain and stuff like that, when he actually blows out someone's head. But if it's not that, then it's not going to be that much of a submission, I don't think. And to finish the match on that I thought it was a bit. I appreciate his move, but I just thought I can understand why. Crush maybe wasn't a massive figure in people's minds looking back.
No, I mean, he's dressed up almost like a Hogan, like maybe a new Hulk Hogan coming out, and I was surprised by the reception he got, because as far as I could remember from rewatching these a couple of years back, he had a bit of a cup of coffee. He didn't have a long run in this incarnation of it, and he didn't really get over, but he was here, and that was, I guess, my biggest takeaway. But he beats the Berserker quite handedly in a reasonably short match. We then go back to the Bushwhackers and Lord Alfred Hayes. This time they're trying to build a window, which is never going to end well with these two idiots. They're trying to mark out where to make the hole. I noticed there was already a hole on the wall, so I don't know if they shot it once and ruined it and had to redo it.
That's clearly what happened.
Yeah. But anyway, they mark a hole in the middle. They go to hit the middle part. They miss it by a mile. These are just. It becomes clear at this point that these are just comedy bits to segue from one match to another. At this point, obviously, the way that the WWF is functioning is gimmick based, character based, and the Bushwhackers, as annoying as they are characters, and they're probably popular, amongst a certain audience, and people, they're aiming for comedy here.
Did you know what I noticed from these Bushwhacker segments? And it was So first, like, I've got notes. I've only got a few notes on the Bushwhackers in this, and I must admit, I didn't enjoy this. But though I'm saying I didn't enjoy this as a 32-year-old man, as a 6-year-old kid, that this is probably the most funniest thing out there.
Yeah.
It reminded me very much of something like, and in the UK we have something called like the Chuckle Brothers, which is like two exactly. Theme tunes there.
Probably get fucking copyright strike on that.
But it definitely, it felt like this whole segment was a kid show, and even so that actually all these sections where they're doing the measuring and the other stuff. The first one they speak about health and safety and how important health and safety was. The second one they spoke about like maths and understanding your maths and stuff like that. Then there was like all about sort of safety and electricity, which came onto later on and stuff like that. And so actually, even though there were all these comedy sort of sketches, they're all sort of subtle ways of teaching kids about sort of, you know, health and safety, maths and stuff like that, or just like in a funny type of way. But yeah, it definitely felt like that part of the show to me felt like it was 100% aimed at, you know, pre secondary school kids, or in maybe someone outside the UK with someone sort of like 10 years and younger. That was definitely that audience. The way is overhyped and, you know, and funny, and you know all these sort of little hidden messages. But you know, it is what it is. As I said, I didn't enjoy it. I really didn't enjoy that part, I must admit. But like it's it did turn me off the Bushwhackers. I considering that in the Rumble when we watched it, I really love these guys, and now I'm like, fuck them.
They're in the bins now.
They're in the bins. They've been cut, but but yeah, it was. I did find it interesting that it showed where WWE's head was at.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it segues into Earthquake versus Repo Man, which no one was asking for, I don't think. I mean, Earthquake is more of a spectacle than a good worker. I think we can all admit that, and he would just say that himself. Like, this is spectacle of the man, not that he's going to be putting on 5-star matches, working 25 minutes to an hour to 30 minutes, putting on great matches. But this is an interesting match. I mean, one of the things that I picked up on was Lord Alfred Hayes is on commentary. And he mentions at one point, and this is saying how boring the match was at one point. It wasn't a long match, but still, there's time for people's minds to wander. He starts waffling on about how the cameramen have a good life and how they get to tour the world, they get paid well. And I'm like, what are you talking about, Alfred? Who's telling you to say that? But the match itself was what you'd probably expect from Earthquake and Repo Man. They talk about how Repo Man's a good front runner. He doesn't really get much steam in this, and I'm pretty sure Repo Man botched the dive onto Earthquake. Like, he comes off the ropes and then dives. He kind of like doesn't quite reach him. Earthquake has to put him down, then pick him back up again and slam him, and then he hits the Earthquake and wins. But I mean, at this point, we've had fucking Crush for the Berserker. We've had Lord Alfred Hayes spoil the main match. We've had the Bushwhackers pissing around. And then this is the next treat we get. At this point, were you thinking that Nick on Facebook was just having a laugh of us trying to find the worst event possible for us to sit down and watch for a couple of hours?
I must admit at this point, I'm definitely not enjoying it. And this Repo Man versus Earthquake was by far the worst match on the whole video. Like, it was just awful. And actually, like, I think it said something that all my negative notes against this match was directed towards Repo Man, mainly because I probably expected Earthquake just to be crap. And when you say he doesn't do 5-star matches, you mean he doesn't do 5-star out of 10 matches. He is that poor. He is a spectacle, and I get it. Like, but you need to keep these matches short, which it was relatively short. But like, things that just annoyed me on this match was, like, I think you mentioned it was at one point Repo Man went to do a clothesline off the ropes, and he just completely bodged it, and it was just like, that was crap. And he did and you said again, he did another stunt off the ropes, and it just didn't work. And it's just like, just don't go up the ropes if you can't do it. And,
no, he can't.
But hey ho. But it was a very good match, and I at this point I'm thinking, crikey, what we've been sold is. I can understand maybe this is now the collection of matches they didn't want to put on TV because these are just poor.
Yeah,
and I'm thinking. Nick, if you're listening, I'm going to sit through and do this, but I hope you appreciate what you're putting me through here, because it's we talk about watching classics, and at the moment this isn't a classic. Though saying that, we did watch WrestleMania this year, and that also wasn't a classic.
No, it was about 8 times as long, so that wasn't ideal. I mean, it's so odd. Like, there is several botched spots in this match. Like, this is a video pack. It's not a live pay-per-view. And when you see it in a live pay-per-view, like a botch or something go wrong, you're like, well, they were doing that live. Like, there's nothing they could have done to prevent that. This match, they selected from hundreds, possibly, of matches that they could have got and just put in from a house show they were recording, and yet this still made the cut. I just think, what's going on? I mean, I don't think they, obviously at this point, they're not recording non-televised house shows or things like that. So this may have been just what was left at that event where they had the cameras set up. But I was thinking, good God, there must have been something better this night than that. But evidently not. Alfred's back with your bushwhackers using power tools. This time he gets electrocuted, Alfred Hayes. So again, talking about safety. I think it teaches kids the wrong message though, because at this point I thought, okay, that's the end of the bit. Like, that's going to be the end of it, because they're going to not make out that Lord Alfred's dead, but he's been electrocuted. That's it now. But he does come back to life later somehow. So I don't think kids should be electrocuting themselves and then thinking they'll survive that, because they probably won't, in my opinion.
It could be funny, though, is what they're teaching them.
Well, I don't know if it is funny getting electrocuted. I got an electric shock off the dog earlier, and that was enough to put me off. And I was like, Jesus.
Cool. What's the dog, a Pokemon?
No, he just gets static. I think because he rubs his head on the floor, it builds up, and sometimes he'll just give me a little shock. But I don't know. I might take him to the vets and see if there's anything wrong with him. I was hoping we'd get to some good matches at this point, but unfortunately, whoever decided to put this video together thought it'd be a good idea to put Gene Okerlund, Master Fuji, and Yokozuna in like an interview stroke sort of video package, and it's all about Yoko's diet. And Okerlund says he goes there, he eats 15 calories a day, they make out, no carbs, all this stuff, and this is too long. It felt like it was. I mean, at this point, I thought I'm gonna have to pause this and come back to it another, like, just get away from it. And we're about 30 minutes in, and I remember you saying to me, you said, "Oh, I've started watching it like a day before," and I was like, "Oh crap, I better do that." And I went back to you and said, "Oh, have you started watching it? Is it?" And you said, "Well, I've got 30 minutes in and I've walked away from it. Let me know if it picks up." And I imagine this may have been the final straw at this point, because this is awful.
This was at this point. There was a combination. I'd ordered food and they were eating food, and I was thinking, "Fucking hell, I'm hungry." But not only that, I was just so disheartened with what I'd watched for this first 30 minutes. I was like, right, I'll pause this and I'll come back maybe with a fresh attitude to this, because I am not in a good space. This first 30 minutes hasn't put me in a good space to keep watching this, and I just hope that if it's like this the whole way through, then I'm going to have to break this up into segments.
Yeah.
And so I turned it off and walked away from it after this segment. I don't have to admit, this was probably the worst segment out of everything. It's just a guy shoveling food in his mouth.
Yep.
It could have been. And it seemed to go on what felt like forever.
Yeah.
Like, I just felt like I didn't need to see him have 10 courses, have all this sushi and noodles and rice or whatever he was having.
He had some steak that looked really nice, and I was like, cool, I could do with that steak, but obviously I couldn't get it because it's 30 years ago almost.
I put it down a note, I like sushi, when I was watching this. That's sort of how my brain was working at this point in time.
Mean Gene wasn't a fan, was he, to start with? He's like, "Oh, I can't eat raw fish, but he tries it, and then he's like, "Oh, it's quite nice."
Yeah, like it was a strange segment. It was a bit, it also felt a bit like, which is weird, it felt like a poor travel show, like where back there'd be like a travel show where they'd be like, "Oh, we went to this restaurant and you got this amazing food," and the chef might spoke like that. It felt like that, but it was a strange one. But I just thought, were they just trying to fill time? But they don't need to fill time because it's a tape. I don't know. I don't know.
I don't know. If Yokozuna had been featured later on in the card, then I'd have gone, okay, that makes sense. Like, they're just building him up and then you get a match of him later, maybe. But he doesn't even wrestle. None of his matches are on this video. So he's just plopped in there, talking about how much he eats, his diet, it's just promoting him. And I was like, yeah, pointless. They must have run out of things. They probably wanted a 2-hour runtime and thought, cool, we've got nothing left. And this is what they came up with. Or they just pulled it from an archive. I don't know when they did this. It's probably appeared somewhere else on some Saturday Superstars or something during this time. But yeah, at this point I was like, oh, this is really testing my patience. But we finally get to the saving grace of things, because I said this is a bit of like a tale of two halves, this video, and it's kind of a tale of like 3 parts, and part 1 has just finished. Like, the awful first part of this video has finished, and fortunately we are treated to a Bret Hart sort of profile around his championship he's going to win at some point during this video, because Alfred's already told us. He's doing an interview with Gorilla Monsoon, and they're plugging at this point. I thought, we're going to go straight into the Bret Hart versus Ric Flair match, but actually they talk about a Bret calls it a steel ladder match, which I've never heard it mentioned in that. I'll just call it a ladder match, to be honest, Bret. I don't think you need to mention the steel part, but he mentions that he's going to be a steel ladder match with Shawn Michaels, Intercontinental title on the line. And I thought, cool, this is one that we've not seen before. So the story behind this is that Bret actually pitched to do. This is doing some research on the internet, and it's 411 Mania. I got this little bit from .com, so they got some good detail for this. But Bret pitched the idea of doing this ladder match with Michaels at SummerSlam 92. So we've already covered that event and talked about that, because at some point it was planned to maybe be held in North America like it had before, but in the end, the WWF decided to come to England, and it felt more appropriate to put Davey Boy Smith Bret Hart against Bret Hart for the IC title. So this match was put together and supposed to be a demonstration from Bret to show how this match could work to Vince. So they did it on obviously a non-televised part of it. And yeah, this is the first ladder match technically that the WWF ever had. And it's not the most famous one because it didn't air, until this video surfaced. The ladder match between Michaels and Razor Ramon is always the one that's seen as like the breakthrough match, and that's the most people would have seen that match and said, yeah, that's the first ladder match I ever saw. But that's an interesting little bit of information there, that actually Bret pitched the idea. This was like a prototype to show him how it would work. Michaels is, I don't know if he's handpicked or whatever, but we know Michaels is a great worker, and we get to witness the first ever WWF ladder match. Incredible.
Yeah, it's a strange one. That is because like they were talking about how it was like the first ladder match and the first, and at first I wasn't sure whether they meant the first ladder match ever or just the first ladder match in WWE. I think there was a bit in commentary where they'd spoken about how they'd seen it maybe once or twice before.
Yeah, so Stampede. So where Bret sort of plied his trade, Stampede Wrestling in Canada, they used to do it up there, which is where Bret got the idea from. And then brought it down here and said, look, let's give this a go. But yeah, this is definitely they go out of their way to say it's the first time it's taken place in this ring. But most people won't have seen it because they won't have got Smack 'em Whack 'em.
Yeah, it's a strange one, but it's a nice bit of history, this one, and it's generally a really good match as well. But it's I must admit, I did really enjoy this match across sort of like the whole board. It was a great spectacle. I feel, considering it's the first ladder match in the WWE where maybe someone like Bret might have done some of this stuff before and maybe Shawn hadn't, they both put on a bit of a cracking show, really. And it's funny as well looking at what would be the first WWE ladder match in comparison to ladder matches now that were, that have been on TV a lot recently, because it's used a lot now. But it's like there it's just one ladder at the entrance and they walk around it. Whereas now there's like 20 ladders around the ring,
all different sizes.
Have your pick and stuff like that. And I appreciate you might need to have a couple of backups just in case one of them breaks or something like that. But like, it's I quite enjoyed having just like the single ladder because it makes it a bit more of a focus, rather than like 20 ladders around the ring.
Yeah, the moment of them going down the aisle to get the ladder is a big one because they can't just do it straight away. They have to sort of work on the opponent, knock them down for enough, and then actually have time to get the ladder without getting caught. So it certainly adds a different sort of psychology and different structure to the match itself. Gorilla Monsoon's on commentary, and I noticed that one of his comments was that Sensational Sherry, who's at ringside with Sean, he mentions that she has a tattoo on her breast.
Yeah. It's a strange one.
I thought, what are you doing, Gorilla? Talking about.
And he was like, I'll show you. Then Alfred was like, nah. Come on.
It's a weird one, but there you go. Gorilla's obviously got a keen eye for tattoos on breasts. I didn't think this was the most technical match, but that's not a bad thing because it's a ladder match at the end of the day. But also, it's not really a spot fest either. It's got more traditional wrestling in it rather than it being like, oh, we're going to use the ladder loads and loads. They kind of like they use the ladder sparingly and at the right points. And I kind of appreciated that for this, that it wasn't just all out war. I guess because Bret's involved, he's not really a massive high flyer. But yeah, it was a nice mix between it having some technical wrestling, but also the fact that it's a ladder match meant that both guys kind of adapted their game, and it was a little bit more of a scramble, I thought. Yeah,
it's, I did appreciate the way that it's sort of like the first sort of 5 or so the bits before getting to the ladder was really aggressive. It felt like by both Michaels and Hart. Like there's lots of like clotheslines and uppercuts that felt like they just hit hard.
Yeah.
It felt like a really aggressive match where they were really trying to hurt each other. And I did really appreciate that because it's sort of you don't always have to go straight for the ladder and all that type of stuff. And it sort of was nice just to have the bit of wrestling, then going for the ladder, putting the ladder in the spot and like that. There was some nice moves in and around the ladder, but as you mentioned, it wasn't overused. And there was areas where I quite enjoyed the interference from Sherry and stuff like that. And like it felt like there was lots of things going on through it, but nothing was overused, and it was sort of packaged together quite nicely by Michaels and Hart. So yeah, I really enjoyed this one.
Yeah, it had a nice blend of like traditional moments, like you said, with the interference from Sherry, which I don't think you'll see too much nowadays in a ladder match. Like all those sort of bits go out the window and it's in favour of like high spots. This sort of retained its wrestling roots as well as introducing a new stipulation to it. What I found interesting was that Michaels hits Bret with the Sweet Chin Music and then does a back body suplex afterwards. And that kind of undersells at this point that the Sweet Chin Music's not a feared finisher because he goes up the ladder only after he's done that back body drop. Whereas if this was 5 years later, that Sweet Chin Music, he'll be up the ladder as quick as he can get up there. But Bret defends the title. He drop kicks the ladder, and Sean goes sort of all the way to the outside, which he's infamous for doing. And he climbs up and grabs the belt. But yeah, this was a good match. I enjoyed this. And it's the first ladder match the WWF had.
That finish as well was I just appreciated as well because you could like so many times now people fall off the top of the ladder and they'll end up getting up and they'll still carry on wrestling. But this was finished by I expect if you fall off the top of a ladder that's a fucking hurt. And so for me, like watching that, I was like, yeah, that's sort of that all makes sense. You don't need to put a finisher on someone, pushing someone off the top of the ladder and then falling outside the ring and stuff like that's gonna be enough to win you the match. And I feel like it'd be interesting. People today in some of these ladder matches could probably take a few notes from that match and maybe dial it back a bit and actually get a better match out of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with that. At this point, I thought, okay, we're going to go through a bit of a chronological journey of Bret working his way up until he gets the title, and that's going to be like the main sort of match for Bret. But we actually kind of skip forward a little bit because we get a title defense between Bret Hart and Kamala. This was a much shorter match. I think like Earthquake, Kamala's more of an attraction than a technical wrestler, so I was interested to see whether Bret could get a good match out of Kamala. I'm not going to say it was a good match, but it wasn't a terrible match. There's even some impressive spots from Kamala. He'd done like a spinning back kick, which I was like, cool. I didn't know he had the flexibility to do that. But Kamala kind of has the upper hand for most of it. Takes a little while before Bret can get some offense, and then eventually he's able to get the win. But what did you think of, first of all, about this going into an era where Bret's the champion and defending the title before we've seen him win the belt, and then also the match itself with Kamala as his opponent?
Yeah, I wasn't too sure what to fully make of this one, because I haven't seen Kamala that much, and what I have seen of him has usually been quite squashy matches.
Yeah.
But obviously Bret Hart is it. Like it was definitely a slower match, but it was. I didn't not like the slowness of it. It was actually quite good, and I made a note about that spinning back kick as well by Kamala, because I was a bit at the time. I was like, what? You didn't expect that, and that's sort of I appreciate that from sort of bigger wrestlers. I think we mentioned in a previous podcast around NXT, and is it Keith, whatever his name is, that did the spinning back kick, the big guy. But like I can appreciate when the wrestlers that are sort of spectacle, like, have little one or two moves in that match that sort of makes you think a little bit different about them, and so I quite enjoyed this, and I this one to me felt like, more than anything, so far it felt like the best story told during a match. There was the lot going on with the guys around the edge of the ring, and Kamala had a lot of the sort of selling that he's this great sort of big spectacle type of guy, and it sort of all led quite nicely into not Bret Hart getting over on him, but Bret Hart quickly getting a quick roll up finish and sort of being like, right, I've retained my title. I probably wasn't the better wrestler in that match, but I'm still the champion, and that's what a champion should do. They should be able to find a way to get the wins when they need it, because Kamala was never going to be the world champ, but it was exactly. But it was a nice match. It was a bit of a come down from the previous one, but it was definitely 10 times better than the stuff we'd seen on that first sort of half an hour, 40 minutes of this taping. So I quite enjoyed it, to be honest. At this point as well, I was also sort of thinking, because I knew we had the Bret Hart Ric Flair match coming up as well. I was thinking, well, we should have just done bloody a Bret Hart DVD rather than this smack and whack 'em. But
strange.
It was odd. A bit of a strange. It was, but I didn't dislike it. I quite enjoyed it. That, to me, if they'd opened on this video on that match, I think I probably would have enjoyed that. Yeah.
No, I thought, it just to me proves how good a worker Bret was, that he could get this sort of match out of Kamala, really. No disrespect to Kamala, but that he's not on Bret's level, and Bret was able to elevate this into it wasn't a long match, just shy of 9 minutes, but it was enjoyable. Like you said, it had a decent bit of storytelling in there. It wasn't unrealistic, because Bret was pretty much beaten for a lot of the match, but as you said, he found a way to win. I was a bit surprised at the end when they started doing a beatdown on Bret, and I was like, cool, I'm just going to end it with him getting his ass kicked, but in the end he's able to overcome that. I mean, I will say that Kamala, basically the guys are holding Bret down, and Kamala does the worst splash I've ever seen, because he, instead of trying to dive on Bret, like the bit is, or the spot is, that he ends up diving on Harvey Wimbledon at the end, or Wimbledon at the end of the day, and instead of just trying to dive on Bret and then Bret pulling Wimbledon under, he clearly just dives on Wimbledon, like aims for him, and I was like, that looked poor, Kamala, if I'm honest, but other than that, that was the only thing that I would pull out of the post-match part, and Bret gets the crowd pop and goes home. We then get a bit of a promo from Bret again. He's doing this profile, and at this point I was thinking the same as you. I was like, why is this just not a Bret Hart video sort of documenting his rise to the championship? Because we've had 2 decent matches. We're about to see a third where he wins the belt. It's like, why is this not just like Bret Hart, the rise of a champion, instead of smack 'em whack 'em with the bushwhackers and Yokozuna eating sushi and shit? But he's saying basically that he's got one shot at this title. At this stage, a lot of people saw this as a surprise title change, because Bret wasn't seen as being on the level of Ric Flair. it hadn't really got that much of a push, but he mentions that he's also had a sprained ankle and a dislocated finger. I couldn't see either of those happening in the match. That could be bullshit, probably was. But Ric Flair comes down with Mr. Perfect, and then Bret Hart comes down. It's his hometown. It's in Canada. I think it's his dad's hometown, they say on the actual commentary itself. But we get Ric Flair versus Bret Hart. It's over 20 minutes. It's a back and forth epic. It's another display for Ric Flair and how good he really was and really is at this moment. But what did you make of this WWF heavyweight title match where Bret finally grabs the gold and wins the World Heavyweight Championship off of the Nature Boy, Ric Flair?
Yeah, this was by far probably the best match on this video.
Not even close in my view.
Exactly. It was a really, really good match, and it's interesting why they changed the title on a house show. And I've been trying to think about this. I've not done any fucking research, so it's probably shame on me. But I wasn't sure whether Flair was going to go out injured, or Flair was maybe leaving WWE at that point for a few years, and they needed to just change the title, or this is back in the days where maybe changing the title on a house show was perfectly viable, because that used to happen before TV became massive. I know they were still doing massive pay-per-views at that point, but like they might have still had some of the mindset where they were changed. So I don't know the answer to that. So if anyone does know, let us know, or if you know, let me know.
Well, it's basically we don't really know the answer. Some people say that Flair had an injury problem, so Vince was a bit like, right, that title needs to come off him, and Bret had been working hard. He's putting on great matches with whoever he's going in, so he decides to go for someone like Bret. And some just say that Vince was being an arsehole just didn't like Flair for whatever reason, and decided to take the title off him. I don't think we'll ever know. I'm sure there are more validated sources that will give you a story. Maybe Dave Meltzer in the Wrestling Observer will have a story in one of his back issues in there about what actually happened and why they did it. But we're in Bret's father's hometown. He gets the nod. And it's for whatever reason, this is his crowning moment. It's not even on TV or pay-per-view. It's become sort of like this mystic, match that not a lot of people would have seen, because it was then just put out on this Smack 'em Whack 'em.
It's a strange one, isn't it? And it's there's lots
back then there's no internet, obviously.
Yeah.
So it's not like when this video was released, you'd find it somewhere on YouTube or whatever. Like, I don't see. Most people from this period probably would have not have seen this match. You'd just come on telly one week and they'd been, oh, Bret's the champion.
Yeah, I must have missed something last week, even though I watched last week. It's a strange one, and I think one. I'm hoping Vince McMahon's kept some sort of diary over his life, because there's so many decisions. Like, I think that would be the ultimate wrestling book. The stories of Vince McMahon and his life and stuff like that. I think, and the decisions he made, because there was so much, and that book would be fucking huge, I think. But it's this is just another one. It's like, why?
Yeah.
Like, we just would never know, or like go to the grave. And what the other interesting thing, however, I did notice about this match, there's lots of stuff, and we'll go through the match in a second, but it was a young Earl Hebner, which was refereeing, and I was like, and I just enjoyed that. I just, I think that's one of the earliest I think I've seen Earl plodding around. Baby Earl. But
was he at Starrcade 83? Did we see him? Like, really young.
I don't think I remember picking up on seeing Earl Hebner.
He's definitely in like 84, 85, and then he sort of disappears after that. But yeah, that's the first I saw him. But for the WWF, he's little Earl Hebner, one of the best referees to ever do it, really.
Yeah, still knocking around, I'm sure, somewhere. Who knows? Probably on Impact or something. But yeah, this was like it's just such a good match, and as you said, Flair is just brilliant. Like, Flair, the way he sells things, I've got it mentioned here a few times in my notes. The way he does, like, he's comedic falls, so where he gets up and he just sort of like it's like someone swipes his legs out and he just sort of just falls down in the same spot, but like a plank. It's a hard way. It's hard to describe it, but it's just one of the best type of falls, and it reminds me of You know, like you look back at some of these people that can sell a move, and they're really good at selling the move like comedically. And so Shawn Michaels was good at it. Like The Rock was brilliant at it whenever he got stunners. He just knew how to fall, but like it was done in such a comedic way that, you know, you think, well, crazy, but it never saw too comedic that it was just like that couldn't have happened. So, and Ric Flair was like the kingpin of that, and he sort of kicked it off. And I love the way he just every time he gets rocked, he sort of get up to his feet and then just fall over and start. It's brilliant. So yeah, and there was I think my only criticism of this match was I didn't need to see Flair's ass was probably about it. But like I guess what you're going to do when you got shorts that short these days.
Yeah.
But and it was there was what was the other bit I quite enjoyed? There was the I think both of them did each other's sort of finishing move. Or so I think Flair did Shawn Michaels, crikey, Bret Hart did the figure four.
That coffee down your neck.
I know, I'm only halfway through it. People listening, we're recording this at 8 a.m. and it's 9 a.m. in the morning now. But yeah, Bret Hart did the figure four on Flair, which was really nice. I enjoyed that, and I'm sure that Flair did the sharpshooter as well onto. Am I right in thinking that?
I haven't got that as a note. I know the figure four definitely happened, but I don't know if Flair managed to get hold of the.
Yeah, I might have got the switch of that, but I did like the figure four the figure four spot because it was a call out to him getting his own move done on him, and it's just the way it just built through the whole thing, and it just finished off really nicely. Lots of to and from, which you expect sort of from a Flair match, you know, getting the upper going down and stuff like that. It's just a really, really good match, and it didn't feel like 20 minutes. And this is why people should watch Smack 'em Whack 'em, even if they skip the first sort of like first half an hour of this video.
Skip
like,
to the Bret Hart profile bit, and then watch these 3 matches, and you'll be treated to a spectacle. Because this is almost 30 minutes. This match is clocked in at around 26:30, and like you said, it doesn't feel that long at all, and it just builds and builds. A proper old school back and forth match. And you know, I've mentioned Flair a few times on the podcast, like as someone who I didn't get to see wrestle anywhere near as much as I would have liked to. The more and more I see of him, he's just incredible. I know people roll their eyes and be like, well, duh, but bearing in mind we were born in the late 80s, and by the time we kind of got into it, the late 90s, WWF fans, it was, you know, he was on WCW then, and I'd only seen a handful of bits there. But going back and watching the Starcades and then watching his run in WWF, he really is a master. And I've just enjoyed almost every single match I've seen him in since going back and watching these events. Both of these guys are just so snug, so tight. Rarely does anything look fake. Like, that's another thing I've picked out, that there may have been like one punch that maybe I could see a bit of air between, but everything else just looks really snug, and they lay their chops in, and it's just great. We get Bret doing his infamous bringing down the straps when he gets fired up, and Sharpshooter gets it for the submission win. That's his first WWF title, and yeah, what a moment that could have been. But it kind of, I guess, plays into the mystic element of it, that it was just done off TV and done on a house show. And also, at this time, WWF is making quite a lot of money through house shows, probably more than what they're doing on TV. If you then find out that there's a potential title change that could happen, this sets the groundwork, doesn't it, that actually the big belt can change on any of these matches potentially.
Yeah, it makes you go, oh, I need to go to the house show if they're in my... And it's... in the States, so it's a different world to what we have over here in the UK. Like, our country is the size of one state, so a show could be anywhere in the country, and we could still make our way over to it. Whereas over there, like, if you're in different states, it's such a long journey. You're never going to go from, you know, one side of the country to the other. Whereas it takes us maybe maximum, if you go from one end to the very other, in the first point, maybe 9 hours in a car.
Tops,
so like it's a different world. So if it's coming to your state and you think, wow, there's a chance for a title switch here because it has happened before, you're going, right, I'm definitely going to that.
Yeah, absolutely. We go back to the little profiling bit where Bret Hart talks about his title victory with Gorilla. What I found interesting here is he mentions that he is the People's Champion. Now, doesn't that sound familiar? Sort of 8-9 years later with The Rock. As soon as I heard that, I was like, oh, I wonder if Rocky was watching. A young Dwayne Johnson saw it didn't really get picked up in the early 90s and thought, I'm going to run with that if I get a chance. But that was interesting. And then, so that sort of ends the middle part of the video, like the really good part with 3 Bret Hart matches, excellent. And then we go back to Home Improvement with the Bushwhackers.
Yeah, at this point I was like, right,
get this off.
I went at this point. I looked at how long was left of the taping. And,
do you remember how long was left?
I think it was like about 15 minutes at this point. And I was thinking, right, there's probably going to be one more match, but I can sit through this 15 minutes now. Yeah. Now I've had 3 good matches. I can deal with whatever they're going to throw my way. In the WWE.
Yeah, I mean, they're trying to. I think they're trying to build. They're doing something with a bathroom and a pipe at this point, and they burst a pipe on Alfred Hayes, and he gets soaked. That's the sort of comedy bit. And I think a fish comes out. And I was like, right, okay, fine. We're obviously filling time to get the 2 hours out of this tape, so that I know what I'm in for now. And then at the end, we get Undertaker versus Razor Ramon, aka Scott Hall, which is just sort of chucked onto the end of it. First of all, what do you find it? Not astonishing, that's a bit of an overstatement, but do you find it a little bit interesting that the main match, which is Bret versus Ric Flair, is not the last match on the video? It's actually this little short match between Razor Ramon and Undertaker that's sort of like the last match.
Yeah, so it's strange, isn't it? And it's like they've got these 3 Bret Hart matches. They're like, well, I wouldn't even say 3. I'd say they've probably got these 2 Bret Hart matches, the ladder match and the world title match, and they're like, right, we now need to. This comes to about an hour's worth, and now we need to find another hour's worth of stuff just to pad it out. Yeah. But even then, they didn't even say, well, we'll have all the. Well, to be fair, the Taker Ramon match wasn't awful, but it was. I would have. Maybe I don't know why they didn't decide to split up some of the so have like poor match, Hart, poor match, Hart, poor match, Hart, or something like that. Build it up and stuff like that. Said. Or anything along those lines. It's just real odd placing. I don't think they would make it like that now, but like it's a strange one. It's a tale of 3/3 this recording.
Yeah, I mean it's a strange. They used to do it. I've been watching some of the WWF main events, Saturday night main events, and they'd advertise like Hogan versus say like. I don't know. Terry Funk, for example, one of them is like the title match. I think they're only like an hour to an hour and 20 minutes long, these particular shows. But the Hogan match is always like in the middle of the event. Like it's not at the end. So this period from like this, they're like mid to late 80s into the early 90s. But I find it quite interesting that actually the main match that people want to see, they plonk sort of directly in the middle and not or towards the back end, but not the very end match. Whereas we're used to now, aren't we, that every card ends with the big match. It ends with either the title match or the big feud match or fucking nowadays the cinematic match that has to go on. Do you think there's a lesson to be learnt, perhaps putting your big matches on not at the very end, or is that a bit of a dead art now, and that crowds might sort of file out of the arena once they're allowed back in?
Yeah, I think people like the fact that you're building up to your main event. And I think it's more so not just purely because of wrestling, but like things like boxing and UFC and stuff like that become massive. That it's such ingrained in our heads that for combat sports that the main event is the last one, and you've got all your build up matches on the way up, and the higher you get to the top, the more sort of prestigious it is. I do think WWE or wrestling, pro wrestling is a little bit different. That they can have some sort of, because they have multiple belts, they can have they do sort of split them up and have some at the start and stuff like that. So you're not just starting off really poor and going. They can kick it off with a good start, but they do tend to try and leave what I call their spectacle match, the match the whole sort of cars really built around to the very end. So like AEW with the Stampede was the last one, but they had the title match like the match before and stuff like that. So I think we commented on that, saying, well, it's strange not having a title match at the very end, but the Stampede was clearly the big match. And it's the same with WrestleMania, for example, where they had Drew McIntyre finished that off for the main title. And so for us, it's sort of it's strange. And I think I do prefer it that way, though, like your big match at the end, because you're still looking forward forward to that. For me here, I'm sort of like, right, we've got the main juice out of the way. Why are you making me watch this? What are you going to give me that's now better than that? And that's what I'm looking at.
Yeah.
So it was a strange, but it's a different world back then, 30 years ago.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing I would say in defence of doing it this way is that if you have a card that isn't exciting and is long, say it's a 4.5 hour event, and you say if you're in the crowd as well, I've noticed that sometimes crowds, by the time the main event come on, they're tired, like they're just exhausted, or the matches aren't keeping them engaged. So you do run the risk of having your biggest match with a flat crowd, and also people at home. Like if we're watching it and after 4.5 hours, we're like, I don't know how much more I can do with this. Like you can get fatigued. Yeah. I think there is an argument to strategically placing things on your card with perhaps like a bigger match slightly earlier. I don't think it's a totally insane idea to do because there are benefits to it. But cause you remember the tag team match, Kenny and Page versus the Young Bucks? Yeah. That was like the third or second match of the card, and that was really, really good. And you could tell the crowd were just like red hot into that. Not only because it was a great match, but because they weren't tired. And then the Moxley-Jericho match, although I enjoyed it, I thought it was a good match, I felt like they tired a little bit and the crowd weren't as engaged. Because they've been there for fucking 5 hours, probably, 6 hours, and they're tired. But yeah, I think you're right. The combat sports side of things definitely engraves it. I mean, boxing do put on matches after the main event, but they are like low level matches. And most people have left by then. They very, very rarely televise them. And the only time I can remember a main event in the UFC kind of not being like a big match was UFC 100, ironically. John Fitch versus Paulo Thiago was the main event. And not because they wanted that to be the main event, but because they started to run out of time, and they wanted to get the Brock Lesnar and Frank Mir match on before the time limit ran out on the pay-per-view, because everything had gone so long. So it has happened through accident. But final match, as I said, Undertaker versus Razor Ramon. We're heavy into Undertaker's dead man gimmick here. Razor Ramon. I love Razor Ramon, so I was pleased to kind of see him in action. Again, not the best match, quite short. Ramon loses via count out, so he's obviously protected in that instance. Any comments to pass on the Undertaker taking on Ramon?
Yeah, a few. Like I must admit, like this period of Undertaker and the Undertaker's music and the Undertaker's entrance is by far my favourite of all the Undertaker entrances. And
the American Badass.
Oh no, well, that's a different story. But like I think just in terms of the Undertaker, this era is so much better than these Attitude 2000s plus or entrances, and I think maybe that's why I got a little bit of a hard on when I heard it. That WrestleMania, that music and the old music and then AJ Styles popped out, and I was like, oh, all right,
yeah,
because I was thinking, oh, let's take it back, but yeah, I do enjoy it. Looking back at Taker back then and having watched some of his documentaries now, and there's some really good stuff out there about Taker now, I'm starting to really appreciate his slower style.
Yeah.
Because he purposely performs in that way at that age when he's at his peak, but he's performing in such a slower way because the dead man wouldn't be all over the place, he'll flipping here and then everywhere. I like the walk on the ropes, and it's sort of slow, methodical and stuff like that, and just like all the little gimmicks. Razor Ramon is great. He's a bit of what's the best way to put it, is a bit of a shit and cocky and has it all. I enjoyed the finish, like just going, fuck this, I'm going to walk away.
Yeah.
The only thing that annoyed me, and it did, he just walked away. Now these days that would never happen. Like someone would run out and grab him, or he'd get hit and he'd get thrown back in the ring. And he just wouldn't just walk away, and then the match just finishes after like 5 minutes or whatever. And you think, and it sort of does protect both. The only thing I think sort of annoyed me a little bit about that was it definitely wasn't a 10-second count. He was out the ring.
That's well quick, wasn't it?
It was about 4 seconds after he was out the ring, and the referee went, it's over, it's 10 seconds. I was thinking, that isn't 10 seconds.
No, because if they're both out and outside, the 10-second will be about 50 seconds because they count really slow. But because the referee knew it was the finish, he just sped up the count. Yeah, it was just a little bit too quick. Apart from that, like,
that's the type of match that was a nice squash match, a bit, like the Taker Kamal match at SummerSlam. It's not like going to be the most the greatest match, but it has a nice, interesting little story there. It's one of those ones that would have been great, breaking up some of the Bret Hart stuff.
Yeah.
And actually, I quite enjoyed seeing that on this video, because it once again was a match we wouldn't have seen. It cements some more of these characters and sort of their styles, and I just just enjoyed it. But it wasn't up to some of the stuff that Bret Hart was doing earlier on, but it was just a nice match. I enjoyed it. It didn't deserve to be the last thing on the tape. It was something that should have been in the middle, but it is what it is.
Yeah, it is what it is. It wasn't a terrible match in the end. It was nice and short. That's the saving grace for a lot of the matches here. They were short, even the bad ones, so they're less offensive to me. We do end with Lord Alfred Hayes and his home improvement. He sits down to watch his favourite Coliseum videos. Bushwhackers put him in a chair. They bring a telly out and put it on a weird stand. It didn't look like a TV stand to me. But that's how it ends, with Alfred Hayes sitting on there. I don't know whether they were trying to sort of say that he'd fallen through the floor or something. But
I thought that they were like, maybe they bulldozed the house or something and he was still in there.
Yeah, maybe, but weird ending. That's how Smack and Whack 'em ends. I mean, what a strange little video this is. Like, one part excellent Bret Hart profile of his some great matches from him. First ever ladder match, carrying Kamala in a decent match, and then an epic with Ric Flair. Another part, sort of just weird short matches that have no interest or not that great. And then another part, just some unbearable bits and segments of Alfred Hayes doing home improvement, and then Yokozuna eating fucking, what is it, steak and fish. Sushi. What an odd little video this is.
Yeah, it was bizarre. I'm glad that to be honest, looking back at it, I'm glad I've watched it, because I feel like I would, now having watched it all and seen those Bret Hart matches and so forth, it makes it worth watching for those alone. However, I did test my judgment at the start, and it definitely doesn't come with a raging review to say everyone get out and watch it. But if you're into your wrestling and you're into your early 90s and you like Bret Hart, then there's this home video is 100% Smack and Whack 'em is worth a watch, and it's 2 hours, and that's a bloody a Raw, a SmackDown, a Dynamite now. So maybe take a rest from SmackDown 1 week if you're watching SmackDown, and just watch this instead, and you'll somewhat enjoy it. And to be honest, so you probably get better wrestling and some of this than most of SmackDown now these days. So you're on for a winner. You'll probably actually think it's Repo Man versus the Earthquake is probably one of the best matches you've seen if you've been just watching SmackDown. So yeah, I definitely think it's worth a watch, and people that haven't watched it, it's on the WWE Network. It's loads of stuff on the WWE Network's going free. So if you've not got the license, it'd be worth giving it a search. See if it's on the free stuff. I'm not sure if it is.
We'll find out, won't we? Because your subscription will be expiring soon, and we'll have a look and see what you can and can't see on there. It'd be interesting.
After my backlash, maybe this needs to be a Patreon tier, paying for James's WWE Network.
I think it's a goal, not necessarily that, but there's a goal on there to cover spending costs, which includes the WWE Network for you.
That's what we want, but I'm hoping it's the type of thing that the WWE would give away for free, because there is no reason to put this behind a paywall. No. I don't think, and actually it'll help the WWE. So I go out and try and watch it if you can. It is definitely worth the 2 hours, and just if you're getting a bit tired, just skip forward to the Bret Hart stuff, and you'll enjoy the second hour and sort of 20 minutes worth of the video.
Yeah, absolutely. It's saved by the Bret Hart matches, which is sandwiched between some pretty lackluster matches and some awful attempts at comedy and segments and profile building of Yokozuna. But with wrestling and with any combat sport, I always find if you get one or two good matches on the card, it kind of saves it. like you're pleased with what you've watched. It's when you get just like 6 stinkers and you're like, oh god, what have I just done there? But this definitely has those 1 or 2 matches that you'll want to see, and it's a bit of history seeing Bret win the belt for the first time, and as I said, Ric Flair's a master at the game, so you'll get to see 2 of the best ever go at it in a classic match that was not on TV or pay-per-view at the time. So wasn't until 1993 that people got their hands on this. So it's that time. Got a score. Smack 'em, whack 'em, Mr. Paper. As usual, it can be 2 thumbs up, 1 thumb up, neutral, 1 thumb down, or 2 thumbs down. What are you going to go for with Smack 'em, whack 'em, the very strange home Coliseum video package that's kind of like a homage to Bret Hart, but not quite, because we've got the Bushwhackers doing home improvements and Yokozuna eating his dinner.
Yeah. For me, it's an odd one. It's not. I'm gonna sit bang straight in the middle on this one and not give it a thumbs up or a thumbs down. Neutral.
AKA fence sitter, they call that.
Real. It definitely is for this one. It's I really like the Bret Hart stuff. But that first half an hour, I think, have probably scarred me for a long period of time. And like if it wasn't so bad in that first period and the Bushwhackers and all of that, I would have given it, Virgin 1 to maybe even 2. But that just really, hammered me. And the way I sort of think in my head, like everything on that, a video or whatever has to be great to get 2 stars, and it wasn't. And then I'm thinking about giving it 1 star, and then in comparison to other things I've given 1 star, and I've enjoyed other things more. So it has to take a step back, unfortunately.
Cool. Well, they ain't stars, they're thumbs, but yeah, I get what you're saying.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Thumbs.
I'd be really stingy only handing out 2 stars. People are like, hang on a minute, that doesn't sound like it's worth having, but the thumbs are worth having. I'm going to give it 1 thumb up. I know there's some diabolical crap in it, but it's minor in comparison to seeing like 2 of Bret's great matches and stuff that we wouldn't have been able to see otherwise. And sort of peak Flair. Well, I don't know when Flair's peak was. It seemed like it was forever, but a great match of Flair. Definitely good match with Shawn Michaels in the ladder match. And Kamala just showing that you can have a half decent match with him as well. So I'm going to just give it the 1 thumb up just about. I think you should seek it out, especially if you're a Bret Hart fan. Don't know why they didn't just make this the Bret Hart video, in all honesty. Just put two or 3 more Bret Hart matches on it. Have that little interview section that he was doing with Gorilla Monsoon, and then like have it as a profile as your champion. But we got Smack 'em Whack 'em with Lord Alfred and the Bushwhackers, and it created a very strange blend of wrestling programming. I think that's it, Paper. Smack 'em, whack 'em, done. If you do want to, as I mentioned a couple of times, if you do want to do or send in some suggestions for us, head over to patreon.com/DDT WrestleCast, where you can join one of our tiers, which is called DDT Booker, and you can put suggestions in. And to be honest, as long as there won't be, but if there's not 200 people suggesting 200 different videos, you're more than likely will get to it, because we don't get too many suggestions that come in. So I will at this point commit to whatever you suggest, providing it's legitimate and we can get to it either on the network or YouTube or a wrestler's website without any sort of other financial or illegal outlay. We will get to it and review it. So head over to patreon.com/DDT WrestleCast. I think that's it though. Smack 'em, whack 'em's in the books. We'll be back next Friday with some sort of wrestling content. No idea what it'll be, because it's always crazy and wacky in the world of wrestling, but nothing more for us to say apart from thanks for your time and ta-da.
This was a Dimp Digital production.